What's going on YouTube? So sedans are certainly not dead in the Mercedes lineup. And for proof, look no further than this new CLA 35 AMG. It is the latest small swoopy addition to the lineup, and while not a full AMG model, it has more than a small dose of fun. So with that all said, let's go ahead and see if the fun factor punches above its weight class. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about the exterior design. Now, first thing you'll notice is that you basically have the full-fledged AMG design, even though this is not a real AMG. So what you have here is the signature 2-bar chrome design here with the black mesh behind it. And then down here on the bottom, you have a little silver accent, which can be deleted if you choose the AMG black package. And then coming up here to the headlights, you'll notice they have a very premium and upscale look, and that's because you have standard full LED lights. Now you can also get optional adaptive abilities if you want to add that to your CLA. Now one of the things that really sets off the design for me is the fact that you have these classic AMG wheels. They have that typical 5-spoke black design with the AMG branded brake calipers here. Now these are 18 inches, but you can get a series of 19-inch alloys if you want something that stands out a little bit more. And then coming up here to the mirrors, we just have heating. However, with the premium package, you could add auto dimming, power folding, as well as the blind spot monitoring system.
Now coming around to the CLA's rear and side design, Mercedes does call this a 4-door coupe, so you definitely are going to see that sloped back design for the CLA as compared to the A-Class, which is kind of the more sedan-oriented model. And that continues as far as the feature set is concerned. We do have a standard spoiler up top, as well as thin, fully LED taillights. And then down here at the bottom, you do have an AMG Sport exhaust system, as well as this aggressive rear diffuser, which really does give it a throaty sound. Now, as far as the safety is concerned for the CLA, Mercedes does throw in forward emergency braking with pedestrian detection as standard equipment on all CLAs. Now, if you want the advanced safety systems, that's going to be included in the driver's assistance package, and that includes active lane keeping assist, evasive steering assist, active blind spot monitoring, as well as an advanced adaptive cruise control system called Active Distance Assist Distronic. That's literally a tongue twister. Well guys, that sums up the cool exterior of the CLA 35, so let's go ahead and check out the inside and then take it on a test drive.
Now checking out the key fob here, you do have the special AMG fob, which has the darkened aluminum trim on the bottom, as well as piano black trim on all the rest of it. Now this fob itself is standard, however the sensors on the door handle, they are optional. And taking a first look inside the cabin itself, you will notice there is definitely a resemblance to the A-Class as well as the GLB that we were in recently. However, there are plenty of unique touches to set this aside as something a little bit more special. Now, as far as your different interior color and material schemes, there are quite a few, as you would expect from a Mercedes. So starting out, you have MBUX synthetic leather. That comes in your choice of black with red accents, which is what we have, or a never gray option. And then you can also get optional real leather, and that includes black, Bahia brown, a two-tone black and red color scheme, or a titanium gray option. And then of course you do have a variety of different trim levels. We have the standard aluminum, but there are some optional woods if you prefer that. Now turning over here to your door trim, it is very nicely appointed. You'll notice we have a suede Alcantara across the entire armrest with some color contrast stitching. The top part is soft touch with more contrast stitching, and we have a large piece of real aluminum trim. Now of course, in typical Mercedes fashion, the seat controls are up here. We have an 8-way power adjusting seat with 3-person memory as standard equipment. However, on this specific model, we don't have heated seats or ventilated seats, but of course you can add those for about $550 each. And as far as your windows, they are one-touch automatic for all 4. Now checking out the seat here, the CLA 35 does come with the special sport seat, so you have the integrated headrest. It looks really, really cool. And of course the center part here is finished in that Alcantara for a nice sporty look. Now even though this is basically a sporty trim level of something that Mercedes considers an entry-level vehicle, material quality is still pretty nice. So across your upper dash here, this is all a soft touch plastic with some more of that color contrast stitching. Dropping down here to the middle, you have a really, really cool touch. It's basically a large piece of aluminum here, which is painted over with black stripes. Definitely stands out a lot. Down below that, we have a leatherette trim, and this goes all through this middle portion. Of course, you have some piano black trim, and then your lower parts, they are hard touch down here mostly, but everything does fit together very solidly in that typical Mercedes-Benz way. Now to start up the CLA 35, you do have push button start. Now looking ahead here to our gauges as well as the broader infotainment system, as you can see we have the dual 10.25-inch displays. They are standard on the CLA 35, whereas the CLA 250 comes standard with 7-inch displays. And it basically works together to make a nearly seamless screen design. Now in terms of these gauges, they are highly customizable, just like in other Mercedes models. We have it in a really cool looking sport display right now, but you can use this little touchpad here on the steering wheel and you can swipe around and customize through a whole lot of different displays. You can also change the entire design as well. And additionally, you can get a head-up display as an option. Now coming back here to the steering wheel, this is one of my favorite aspects of the cabin, because even though this is kind of an AMG light model, you could say, it does come standard with this full AMG steering wheel. So it's flat bottom, it's always leather wrapped, it's very thick rimmed, it feels really good in the hand, and you have the real metal accents all through here, as well as full real metal paddle shifters, which feel excellent. Now as far as the steering wheel itself, it is manually tilt and telescoping, and heating is not available. And then above that you will find rain sensing wipers standard on every model. And then off on the other side here, you will of course find the typical Mercedes shifter. So for drive, you're just going to press down like so, and then for reverse, you just go up the opposite direction. And when you head into reverse, you will find a standard backup camera with active trajectory as well as parking sensors. And then you also have an available parking assistance package, which will throw in a 360-degree camera system as well as automatic perpendicular and parallel parking. And then for park, just press the end of the stalk. Alright, so let's go ahead and roll into interior storage, where I have to say this has quite a bit more storage than you would expect for a vehicle in this size category. So opening up the center console here, this is actually quite deep. It is nicely felt lined as well, and you will find 2 USB Type-C ports inside. Up in front of that, you have 2 adjustable cup holders right there. And then you have a really impressively large bin up here in the front. Very deep, does have a nice rubber lining. It could be a wireless phone charger as an option if you equip it like so. and you also have another USB Type-C as well as a 12-volt outlet. Now, part of the brand new MBUX system is the fact that you now have a trackpad here to control the display, in addition to it being a touch display. And then all around it, you have various different menus. Now, this one right here is for your drive modes. I won't get too much into this right now, but as you can see, there are a bunch of different drive modes, which we can talk about in the test drive. And then on the opposite side of the shifter, you have some stuff for MBUX as well as your audio controller. Now, we just have the standard audio system on this specific model, but there is an optional 590 watt 12 speaker Burmester surround sound system. Obviously, we're going to take a sample of the standard system. I have to say, sound quality of this system is pretty impressive, especially considering it is the standard system, which is unbranded. Okay, so now let's move on up here to our climate controls. Now, this is the same setup we see in other entry-level Mercedes models like the GLB and the A-Class. So you have a dual-zone automatic setup as standard equipment, and when you make those adjustments, they do show up in the display. These are real metal buttons. You'll also notice, since we have on the CLA 35 standard 64 color ambient lighting, you will see that the vents change color to red as you increase the temperature and blue as you decrease the temperature. So that is a really cool touch. And then, like I said, you have 64 different colors to choose from in the ambient lighting, which runs all throughout the cabin. Okay, so now that brings us up here to the main display here on the MBUX system. Now, this is an all-new system and it is very complicated, so I'm not going to go into a ton of detail here because we do have a dedicated tech help video available if you want to learn more about the system. But just kind of hitting the highlights here, like I said, you can use the touch display or you can use the touch pad. You can also control it via the sensor right here on this side of the steering wheel. It also has voice assistant, so you can just say, "Hey Mercedes,
how may I help you?"
and it will respond to you just like that. And then on this specific example, we do not have navigation or the augmented reality navigation system, but you will still have both Android Auto and Apple CarPlay as standard equipment. Now, up above here, we just have a manually dimming mirror, but you can get an auto dimming one as well as HomeLink remotes as an option. And then up at the top here, you'll find one of the nicest standard features, and that is a panoramic moonroof. So as you can see, this is quite large. It does take up the vast majority of the roof here, and almost the entire thing will also open up.
Alright, so first getting back in the CLA's rear seat. Obviously this is not really a focus for this model, and you do have a few sacrifices over that A-Class, one of which I will mention. I actually love these seats. It's a really cool design. They have basically the same design as the one in the front. However, I will say that they're a lot more stiff in the back, and they also don't have as much thigh support as I would like. You know, it's kind of weird to actually be in a sedan that doesn't have much thigh support, but you are going to find that here. So it's definitely style over function with these seats. That said, Mercedes does throw in some features as well. So you do have rear vents standard across all of the models. And here in the center, we do have two USB Type-C ports, which are standard across the board as well. Now in the center, we do have a fold-down armrest with two cup holders inside. And as far as the actual legroom figure, it's going to come in at 27 inches of rear legroom and 36 inches of rear headroom, which does place quite a bit behind the Audi A3. And honestly, to be honest with you, as far as the figures are, I think that it's a little bit more spacious than they would suggest, because behind Drew's seating position, I have around 3 to 4 inches of rear legroom, and my feet can still slide up under the seat. So this is definitely still a usable rear seat. It's just not the most spacious or comfortable. Now walking up to the trunk area, now to keep that sleek design, Mercedes has integrated the button within the emblem, so you just push the top of it, and it does pop right open. And once inside, you're going to find 13 cubic feet of space, which is actually a really good amount of space for something in this class of vehicle. It's actually above the Audi A3, which we did just a few days ago. And as far as how Mercedes finishes it back here, it is finished nicely with a nice carpeting along the floor. And you can also fold the seats 40-20-40 split in this model. Now, Mercedes really doesn't skimp out on the features with this CLA model, since we do have the same power seat adjustments as the drivers, and we do also have 3-person memory, which is really not expected for a vehicle in this class. Now, in front of the passenger, we do have a good-sized glove box. It is not felt lined, but it is illuminated. And up top, we do have a sun visor with a light and mirror, and it does also detach. It does not extend, though.
Right. So just kind of first coming onto the throttle there, we didn't have a lot of space, so that's certainly not all she's got, but you can really tell there's substantial power here. Now, as we have discussed, this is not considered, a full AMG model. That being said, it does have a 2-liter AMG enhanced turbo 4-cylinder, so it's not hand-built or anything, but they have put their touch on it, and you can certainly tell that.
Yeah.
Power numbers are going to be 302 horsepower, 295 pound-feet of torque. So certainly for a small vehicle like this, it definitely scoots.
Yeah, for 0 to 60, you're looking at 4.8 seconds. If that gives you any reference point, that's a very, very quick 0 to 60. I have to say, the sound, I guess we're going to talk about this. It doesn't sound as bad as you might think. It's a 2-liter 4-cylinder, it's a pretty small engine, and on the outside, it's okay sounding, but once you get driving with it, I think it actually sounds pretty good.
Yeah.
It sounds like maybe more like
the Sport exhaust.
V6.
It's got a throaty sound to it, and it kind of farts a little bit, got a little burble.
Especially with like the aggressive transmission shifting, it really has a good sound with it.
Nice.
So much fun out of such a little engine.
I
know. It really, really pushes you back in your seat. It's impressive how much power that engine has.
Now, we haven't mentioned it yet, but a key part of this whole package has got to be this lightning fast 7-speed dual clutch automatic transmission. I mean, you can just listen to this thing. It fires off shifts like a supercar.
It really does.
Really impressed by this transmission. Because we drove the A-Class, we drove the GLB. These vehicles, they share common stuff for the most part. But they don't share this transmission, and this transmission is very, very impressive. Definitely puts this 35 AMG product, a step up from the regular stuff. Now, I went ahead and activated the manual mode so I can try out the paddle shifters. I'm obviously anticipating it's going to be a pretty good experience here. That's crazy.
Love it.
This transmission is nuts.
I think this transmission is straight out
What
of the
in the
AMG
world?
GT that we tested.
Yeah, I'm so...
Like last summer. It seriously is like a Ferrari.
Like,
in the way it shifts on.
color me shocked. Like, I don't know. I'm really surprised by the performance of this car. It feels like it could be a full AMG. I mean, in that transmission, just bonkers how fast it is and all the farts. This is genuinely a lot of fun. Alright, so we kind of made it out here to a country road. Try out the handling a little bit. I have to say it's pretty good. Now it's not super heavy like some of the other AMG models. Actually on this road here we drove the AMG GT 4-door. So of course that's a very high-end AMG product. It's not incredibly heavy like that. That being said, as you can tell, it's really very accurate and very fast responding, and you really have a good sense of where the wheels are placed. So all in all, it's a well-rounded setup here. Kind of nicely balances between that everyday use around town, which is what you'll probably be using this mostly for, but also when you get out on a back road, you can certainly have a good time with it.
Now I do still need to talk about some of the more practical stuff like the fuel economy for this vehicle. So they all come standard with the all-wheel drive system, so they're all going to be rated at 23 city, 29 highway, 25 combined, which, it's not great fuel economy for something this small, but to be honest with you, with as much performance as this vehicle has, I do think that that's pretty darn good fuel economy for something that can go 0 to 60 in 4.8 seconds, and you can have as much fun as you're having with this. So it's not like a horrible fuel economy figure, so it's still pretty practical. And just for reference here, I will get out the sound level meter, see what the minimum is at going around 50 miles an hour. We're looking at 52 decibels, which is a really respectable figure. That's actually quite a bit less than the Audi A3 that we did just a few days ago, and this is, an AMG model. And it just goes to show you that it's very quiet and practical up in here. Up in here, up in here.
Up in here. So overall, in case you haven't noticed already, I'm pretty impressed by this car.
Yeah.
I really just am kind of floored by the combination of both comfort and the, sporty dynamic of this. Because it really doesn't feel any less comfortable than the, more luxury-minded A-Class and GLB that we drove. Yet, I kind of have this, let's say, 8/10 of the full AMG experience by having the engine, the lightning fast dual clutch, great handling, great steering. It really is a awesome, well-rounded package.
Alrighty, and now let's go ahead and talk about the pricing for this CLA 35 AMG. Now it does come standard with 4MATIC all-wheel drive, so your starting price is going to be $46,900 for all of the models. Now in typical Mercedes fashion, they do offer quite a few options that you can throw on it. This one doesn't have too many of those. We just have the blind spot assist for $550, optional Sirius radio for $460, as well as keyless go for $550. And then when you add the destination charge of $995, this particular model as equipped comes in at $49,455, which I have to say, definitely a really good price point, for something kind of performance oriented. If you can go without stuff like heated seats, ventilated seats, you can really get a lot of performance for not too big of a price tag in this lineup. Well guys, we've enjoyed watching this in-depth look at the 2020 Mercedes CLA 35 AMG. We really appreciate you watching, and if you've made it this far in the video, hopefully that means you enjoyed, so be sure to hit that subscribe button down below, and we'll catch you next time as we sample more of the latest automotive delicacies.